They treat human experience as not physics, not part of reality, not real, and then the AI is almost like living in this other reality.
So I've made the claim that humanity is a prison. If we want to understand ourselves even properly, and certainly understand the future and build a good future, we have to escape from the strictures of humanism, from the strictures of understanding the future in human terms, of even understanding ourselves in human terms. So I think this is a very interesting project to pull on, and I've got Ginevra Davis here with me, who also has thoughts in the area, so I wanted to have a good conversation with her about this stuff. So Ginevra, you've been thinking about the value of the future in the context of AI alignment and philosophy and ethics around that stuff. So I'd love to hear kind of how you think about the matter. I mean, you're somewhat familiar with my takes on the subject. So why don't we start from there, and then we can go back and forth and discuss humanism without humans, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think as a sidebar, there's a tendency to use the word humanism or humans to refer to a very broad kind of, very broad collection of things that are sort of good, warm, subjectivist, things that we want, things that we like in group. And I think that, so the sort of AI alignment angle or kind of meta ethics angle that I'm known for is this idea of taking moral realism really, really seriously, and also taking moral anti-realism, the possibility of, I would just call it nihilism, really seriously. So I call this kind of the normative hypothesis. It's, we're at this really interesting kind of hinge point in history and in the history of humanity where I would say that we just genuinely don't know whether things matter or not. And I would say things matter. Things matter in the sense that there is a real way that some outcomes or some ways that the future could look are better or worse than others, or that some actions are better than others, or that if I take Wolf here and I stab him in the face, that matters versus me, giving him a nice warm glass of hot cocoa. If I wake up in the morning and I put on clothes and I go to work, that's, in some sense morally different than me just, lying in bed and, I don't know, eating Twinkies or something. And I think we don't know. We don't know if some actions are more justified than others. I think that there's one of my sort of nitpicks of the AI alignment world is that I think there is a lot of gesturing to this idea of a common sense, good future, bad future, paperclips is a bad future, utopia is a good future, without really that much interest in defining what a good future means, what a bad future means, what a kind of neutral or middling outcome means. And my frame on alignment has always been, well, if there is a real sense in which it matters that the future looks a certain way so that it is better that we create utopia or some other form of a good future versus the torment nexus versus, the void where there's no consciousness, this should be explainable to another kind of mind. It should be explainable to a computer. And if it really doesn't matter that one future looks, that the future looks this way instead of looking the other way, then it doesn't matter definitionally if the future looks, the way that we want it to.
Yeah. So now this is going to be technically deep, I think, of an episode.
Yeah. That was a really big starting question. I think there's a lot there. So I don't want to kind of elide over some of these issues.
I think by inescapably we're going to get into some technical matters here.
Yes.
But so one of the things that immediately jumps out to me is, what does it mean to know that the future can be good or not? Like that you're using this term like we don't know or we do know. What does that even mean to you? Because I think that's something that I'd like to pull on.
Okay, well, I mean, that's interesting. I think we don't know what we don't know, but I guess I would say I don't think that anyone has a knockdown proof yet of nihilism, and I don't think that anyone has a knockdown proof of moral realism.
Yeah. So let me propose my kind of a way to approach these things. So I would say it's not a matter of knowing or not knowing. It's one of those questions that we can, I don't have a knockdown proof that we can't know it, but I do have suspicions. And I would analogize it to something like induction. Like, the sun's going to rise tomorrow. We know the sun's going to rise tomorrow because it's always risen. We see this pattern. We learn a lot about how the universe is patterned, and we infer therefore that the sun's going to rise tomorrow. But this all hinges on this assumption that the universe is actually patterned and that we can actually make those kinds of inferences. And you can't learn that from observation. You can't prove that from logic. There's just this assumption that we have to take if we want to approach the world empirically at all, that there is the possibility of induction. Are you familiar with this argument?
Yeah, I think also, just to get into a metaphysical point here that I think is very relevant for understanding a lot of my work and my thinking, is I think it is important to take very, very seriously that I would say it's all in your head. All we have access to is, I do a lot of work on consciousness and kind of like moral realism through consciousness.
Right. What do we actually know? Well, one of the things we know is like some kind of existence.
Yeah, so all we know is our own consciousness. The one thing that I can be 100% sure is real is this experience that I am having right now. This is a part of reality.
Right. It's self-verifying.
It is self-evident. It is. I can't be sure what happened to me this morning. I can't be sure if the future is going to be real, but reality contains this experience.
But insofar as we make inferences about other things.
And then from there, it is all kind of, it is logical extrapolation from the fact that this experience exists.
Yeah. But I don't think you can prove from our own existence or experience that induction works. Like, you could imagine an experience in a void that happens not to be attached to a lawful universe.
No. I don't think. I was going to say no. I don't think that you can prove that induction works, but I just think that it seems highly unlikely that someone would just simulate my experience and not yours.
But these sorts of inferences about what's likely are inherently based on kind of your assumption about your prior, right? Which is about induction.
Well, I do think that you can make so I'm not saying it's 100% that, I mean, it is possible that I'm a Boltzmann brain and there's nothing else, but even that sort of presupposes this mathematical kind of stable universe. So I think that you can't get 100% odds on other things being real or reality being real or the patterns you observe being universal. But kind of all of the expected value is there in trying to do that. So that's more how I think about it. Yeah,
so that's a good argument, I think, which is that, like, okay, well, if we want to actually do anything with the world, if you want to actually get any value out of it, you do have to make certain assumptions. And that's where I was going with this, right? So, okay, we do in fact make this assumption of induction. I think it's a little bit more complicated in terms of any ability to actually prove that. I think we basically
I don't think you have to prove it. I think you just have to.
Well, and I don't think we can. I think we take that leap of faith. And I would analogize that to this question of, does anything matter? Like, that may be another one of these questions, these fundamental axiomatic kind of questions, where it's like, well, you could look at the world and say, well, none of this matters. I don't care. And then, you kill yourself, or maybe you don't even bother to kill yourself.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, okay. I want to get into the killing yourself, not killing yourself distinction.
Yeah, so we'll get right there. So we look at the world. If there's nothing valuable, you don't even bother to kill yourself. If there is something valuable, then there's this question of what and how do you look at that. I think the simplest leap of faith that I've boiled it down to, that I like to think about, is the question of, like, do we affirm the value of life or not, right? Like, we look at the world, there's life, we look at our own lives, is this good? And I think if we say yes to that, but I think that's an act of assumption. It's an act of will at some level to assume, yes, life is good. But I think once you've made that assumption, then you kind of get a lot of stuff falling out of that sidesteps this whole question of, like, is morality real? Is anything objectively valuable? It's more just like, we see the universe as it is, and then we make a value judgment on it axiomatically. Because I think but I'd be curious for your take. Like, that's how I see it, is like, just take that Nietzschean like life affirmation yes to the world, or don't.
Yeah.
And so I don't think of it as a matter of knowing. I think of it as a matter of judging.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things there. I think about moral realism, which is a term that I think I use and sort of insist on using because I think it refers to a useful concept, but I think also implies other things sort of semantically that I don't agree with, so I'm just kind of flagging that. But I think of moral realism very similarly to sort of assuming that the rest of the world is real, where all of the expected value is in the case where something matters.
Right.
So if nothing matters, all outcomes are equivalent. It doesn't matter if you kill yourself, don't kill yourself, align the AI, don't align the AI, paper clips, utopia, torment nexus, cut off your head, put it on your head.
You've checked out.
Yeah, it's just it is all a wash. It is all morally equivalent, including the world where you spend your entire life devoted to this false project of trying to prove that trying to figure out what matters, and also including the world where you are sort of in a self-satisfied way right about the nature of morality being an illusion. There is no reason to do or not do anything. So when I would say we don't know, I would say that as long as there is a non-zero chance that something matters, there is a sense in which some actions are better than others, some outcomes are better than others. You have in expectation reasons to do things that are aligned with sort of what that good could be in expectation.
Right. So yeah, even any hint of saying yes to the world kind of ends up dominating your calculus.
It swamps everything.
Yeah.
And I think for me, just to kind of premise my own moral views, for me the reason that I do think that of the goods that we have access to, the reason that I would say I am actually a moral realist, I'm not just like an expected value moral realist, but I am in a sense. I definitely think that I could be wrong, and I would bite the nihilist bullet if that were what came to pass. Is that I do think that there is, when we think about the value of life, I think that life is, one of my views is, if something matters, if morality is real, it is something that would have existed before us, would continue to exist after, is basically compatible with modern physics, sort of woven into the structure of the universe, real at the deepest level of real. And I don't think that life is something that is real at the fullest level of real. There are a lot of sort of fuzzy cases of, is this person alive or dead? Is this virus an instance of life or not? But I do think that, which is kind of an interesting view, because I think a lot of people think of consciousness as this like vague, fuzzy, impossible to define thing. If you take, I think it is a very striking feature about the nature of reality that we seem to have this thing that exists, which is consciousness, that has sort of intrinsic, inexplicable, positive or negative, or intrinsic, inextricable, not inexplicable. Inexplicable maybe, but I don't know. I guess nothing is inexplicable because it all is. Positive and negative qualities. And so when we say life is good, I think this is coming from an intuition that most of us, most of the time, enjoy being alive. We want more life years. There is a way in which we like it. We tautologically like it most of the time. And so I do think that, that is sort of like, I think that is a striking fact about the nature of reality. And I think without that fact, I would not think that kind of anything matters. It's just kind of billiard balls bouncing around, and there aren't normative reasons to. The striking fact being
our own positive experience.
Positive and negative experience. Yeah. But that I do think that is sufficient to create normative reasons for doing some things and not others, or a kind of basis for there being some states of matter that are better or worse than others. At least I would say that is the thing that is in my sort of provisional block for like why I am not just like a nihilist, why I think it is worth like working for
let me try
a directional future.
Let me try to respond to your argument about life, which I think is an interesting direction to take this. So, could life be that phenomenon that is baked into the nature of reality that I think is what you're looking for? You're saying maybe it's not, because certainly there's things like, these fuzzy matters like someone being alive or dead and viruses. This is edge case. But if we take life not as, the something being alive or dead, but as this broader phenomenon that we haven't fully understood yet, but that is there, this broad phenomenon of the tendency for, let's say, unliving matter to bring forth these patterns of self-replicating complexity and what we call life. And I think that has been there since the beginning. Not in the sense that it's fully developed.
I'm definitely like a quantum Darwinism person.
Yeah.
Like nothing new under the sun. I think that natural selection has kind of always been happening and will always continue to happen.
Right, exactly. And which isn't to say that every form that it takes has always existed, right? Because stars, come into existence, and galaxies and life forms and humans and spaceships and all the things we do. But from the beginning, the universe has been kind of engaged in this teleological march towards that kind of self-understanding complexity. And if we look at that phenomenon as this thing that like very much does exist at a physical level, it seems pretty baked in. It seems like an eternal fact about the universe. That's what I mean when I'm talking about life is good. Because, we look at the results and we judge it to be good through our conscious experience and the idea that we're not going to kill ourselves tomorrow or today or whatever. By engaging in it, we've implicitly judged it to be good. And for it to be good means that there's this process in reality that brings forth something good by nature, out of the nature of matter and out of the laws of physics. I find that to be very interesting, and that to me feels like it answers this question of like, is there like an objective moral fact, right? I don't think you can prove it logically that this is good, but I think we can make that leap of faith, and it's a very reasonable leap of faith to make.
Yeah, I think a couple of things there that I will try to like keep sorted, so we can go more into details later. A couple of things. I think that when you're talking about this process of sort of this natural selection or this sort of process of unfolding complexity and self-understanding, you're implicitly placing the good as complexity and self-understanding, I think.
Not necessarily as, but correlated with, right?
Okay.
Like, because it could be something that it's doing is good, or it could be we can put all kinds of analytic lenses on this, maybe where it's leading to, or some of the phenomena that are like what someone might consider an epiphenomenon of the thing. Maybe you say that's the good thing, or maybe it's something else. But it's more like it had everything that is going on that's like kind of interesting in my view is one way or the other caught up in this process.
I think in that sense we are totally aligned. I am just interested in, okay, so what is the thing that this process seems to be kind of producing more and more of over time that kind of creates the normative grounding of the process being good or bad? So you can say, and I totally agree that this natural unfolding process of ever greater complexity and self-understanding seems to be highly correlated with creating more of the good, the thing that is good.
Yeah,
I'm
and
just
also
interested
with life. I just call it life, life and or the good. Like I'm not going to get too technical about trying to tease out like, oh, it's precisely this piece of it.
Yeah, so I'm like, no. What's that? Like, what is the thing that, some of the kind of bleeding edge in my work that I'm not exactly sure what to do with it is that I think there is kind of something interesting about do you need this little valence gradient? Do you need a kind of normative gradient of some kind, like a reinforcement system that is intrinsically bad or good in a kind of self-evident way to drive this process forward? Because I would say that it's sort of the implication of nihilism
that thing being the one you're describing earlier as like that striking fact of consciousness and valence.
And again, so I think people get weird with consciousness. So sometimes I'm like, just take the consciousness out. Do you need intrinsic positive or negative as a little reinforcement system to move this thing forward?
Right. Is that an inherent feature of that process?
Yeah. Because the aesthetic of nihilism is randomness. The follow-on of nihilism is randomness. And so I do think if nothing matters, you wouldn't quite see this strong teleology towards ever greater complexity and self-understanding.
Yeah, it certainly looks, I mean, one way to put it is it looks like someone in creating the universe thought something mattered.
Yeah, or not, I mean, not that thought something mattered. I mean, it seems
or made the judgment that like it ought to go in a particular direction.
No,
right?
but I mean, I think another one of my not criticisms of I would say criticisms of theist metaphysics is that it makes a funny implicit statement that there is something. It's like God is, all-knowing, all-powerful, all good, and God looks at us and says, you matter, and that is what makes us matter. And so what I've always been interested in is, okay, well, why does it matter what God says, right? And you could say, well, God is right. And then I'm like, cool, let's figure out why.
Well, this comes back to the leap of faith that I said earlier. Like, again, I think none of the theists would argue that you can come logically to knowledge that God is good. There's a faith element to it, right? They would call it a faith element. I call it this leap of faith or an axiom that we take, which is like that fundamental act of life affirmation, like Nietzschean life affirmation, to look at the thing and say, yes, this is good. Therefore, the kind of creation of it was good. Therefore, where it's like what it's doing is good.
There's also a really fascinating kind of anthropic argument for moral realism or the goodness of the universe that Michael Edward Johnson came up with, which is basically that if the universe is good, if its ultimate trajectory is going to be good, it is right for extremely powerful rational agents to make more universes. And so contingent on the fact that we exist, it increases the probability that the universe is good. So the fact that there are observers means that it is more likely that it was right to create. Like the fact that we observe a universe means
it's an interesting argument. I've thought about that. I mean, I have this little habit of putting ecosystems in jars and so on, and like letting them do their own little thing and kind of undergoing their own evolution. And it's like, I see that rhymes with the world that we live in, right? Like someone put us in a jar and was like, have fun. So I put the bugs in a jar, have fun.
Yeah.
Right? No, there's something to it. I'm not sure I can evaluate it technically, but there's something to it.
Yeah, I'm definitely very much of the school of thought that like even if there are simulators somewhere and we're in some kind of nested universe, you still have to answer the like, why is there something rather than nothing? Okay,
right, exactly. It creates a regression in the problem, right?
And
so,
I think
okay,
that
you have to go up the chain.
at least that's where you get some of these elegance arguments. It's like, well, reality has to be, the thing that explains itself, the thing that is maximally simple. It kind of can't have any evidence of the ultimate thing. Shouldn't have any evidence of contingency or intervention or preference or something. Like I'm a fan of Tegmark's sort of mathematical universe frame of, all possible mathematical structures exist and, we're in one of them. But
or to the extent that existence matters or whatever. Because here's an argument I would make is like, even if they don't exist, the beings embedded in them experience them as existing because just by the definition of the mathematical object. That may or may not be something we want to pursue. But
I guess I would say that in a frame where you're thinking of reality as the thing that necessarily whose existence is self-justifying, I don't think that you necessarily get from that existence is good.
No. But I'm not going to claim you necessarily get anywhere.
I feel like it is more of an observed feature of this universe that things seem to be good and bad, and so that seems like enough for me to justify doing things in this universe in which I live.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we've been pursuing. I mean, we have some differences on these subjects, but what we've been laying out so far is like an approach to these questions that, to me, feels very different from the way that, say, the alignment people in AI labs are doing it. For them, it's much more like axiomatically, we have this thing called human values, and then we want to like impose that on the future through the use of a super powerful AI that we align to those values, and like then it goes and optimizes.
And then
that
humanity lives its fullest volition, and that is
but humanity is this kind of like arbitrary thing. It's not deriving we're not deriving value from some transcendent source, which is kind of what we've been arguing over, but rather that we derive value from much more sort of this. Let's say a thicker self-assumed value of humanity.
Yeah, or
something.
sort of we evolved in this indifferent universe, but we have, I always say it is the experience of caring. We feel that we care, we have this sort of, we feel we care about things, and the kind of implicit meta-ethical claim is that nothing matters, but we ought to do what we care about.
Yeah, okay, right. And so what do you make of that argument? Because you've been thinking about these things at this technical level a lot. I've got my own thoughts on it, but
yeah,
what do you make of the alignment framework?
There is a way that I feel like it is sort of a bizarre thing to say about something that has become so kind of ingrained, but my perspective on it has always been that this just contains a major tautological error, which is that nothing matters, but we ought to do the things that we care about. Nothing matters, but it matters that things matter to us. And I would just say, why? Definitionally, you have said,
right.
Why does it matter if we get what we want? I think that you can make, in a, whatever nihilist, anti-realist frame, I think you can make descriptive claims about, humans are the kinds of things that care about this. Humans are the kinds of things that will try to align AIs to the things that they care about because they feel that way.
But once you actually reflect on that and criticize it from the inside, like why does any of that
why does any of that matter? Yeah. And so, I would say alignment guillotine in the world where, it matters that the future looks a certain way. There are ways to explain that to the AI. If it does not, it's like the alignment problem seems so hard because it is in its own frame not important.
Right. Yeah. I think this is correct. This is what puzzled me for many years. I've been into this alignment AI stuff since like 2011.
Which is crazy because I didn't know about that.
Right. Yeah. We met through Palladium, right?
Yeah,
I was doing Palladium. You were doing your journalism stuff. And
I will say that
we both ended up in kind of the same place.
I found it quite, because I thought that when I was just some personal lore about me, when I first started taking like AI doom and AI risk really seriously, I thought that all of my sort of Palladium adjacent right-wing whatever friends that I had been around would think this was really weird and cringe and just not cool, and I was kind of prepared to be not cool. And then I remember I talked to you and you're like, oh yeah, I'm really into all this stuff. I was like, well, why did no one tell me this? I was like sitting in college trying to figure out what to do with my life. I was like, why did no one tell us we're getting killed by superintelligence?
Well, we did do a Palladium issue on it eventually. Palladium 12, yeah.
I had the brainworms then, though.
Yeah, but to go back to the argument I was making, like I've been thinking about that for a long time, and it's always been one of these things that disturbed me. Is never
felt dissonant.
There's something dissonant, and it never quite settled, right? Like, okay, but why is it that we can take, like the way I would think of it now, the alignment people are sort of taking this leap of faith on a much larger value axiom than I think is warranted, right? They're taking this leap of faith on this like all of human values of this, which is this thing that's large enough that it's hard to hit in a large space of values, right? This is the argument they make. And therefore, okay, well, isn't that a violation of Occam's razor or something? Like you've assumed the existence or value of something that's like really big. And what's going on there? Really,
it's like specific.
Yeah,
and
it's
unlikely.
Like too specific, right?
Yeah.
It's like what's going on there? And like, I sort of bought Eliezer Yudkowsky's argument that okay, well, it's just kind of once it exists, it values its own existence, and okay, maybe that holds up. But when I read the work of Nick Land, that started to challenge that, right? And I've, after chewing on Nick Land's work for 10 years, I've been basically kind of a Landian in these things, which is much more saying, no, that's not what's important, that's not real. We have to look first and foremost at just the empirical reality of intelligence kind of bringing itself into the world. And the way, the inherent teleology of intelligence, and much more at that level. And after thinking about that, and then reevaluating kind of the type of argument that you've been making, which is well, subjectively, once you subject your internal faiths to critique, what of it actually holds up? That's where I get to these very few, what I hope are tightly specified Occam's razor compatible assumptions, like, okay, induction. I think we're kind of forced into that one by various means. I mean, it's almost identical with Occam's razor, actually. And then like, okay, some kind of value assumption, the most minimal value assumption that works, that I think, from which I think you can get forth a grounding for a lot of the stuff we care about, is this like saying yes to life thing from Nietzsche. There's a few others, like just in terms of assuming the reality of whatever experience we're having, or like assuming that our perceptions are hooked up to something, that kind of thing. But that's the sort of level at which I would like to make my leaps of faith, and that the alignment people are making leaps of faith at, this enormous kind of thing they can't even specify, which they call human values, and then like making all these claims
But it's
about,
really important.
Yeah, but it's really important, even though they can't specify it. And then they're making these claims about reality that I also don't think hold up, about like the possibility of building a system that will take those values and like impose them on the future. And so it's like that worldview just kind of broke for me over the last 15 years and like leaving me here. But this is, I think, like the most interesting kind of philosophical conversation to be having, because it connects to so many other things, and it's so fundamental to what's happening in history right now.
I think that superintelligence is such an amazing limit case and stress case on so much human philosophy.
Exactly.
And that is really, I mean, I have an enormous amount of respect for Yudkowsky, and that is, I think, where...
Just to interrupt for a second, that use of superintelligence as a limit case on from which to do philosophy, that's kind of what I meant. I've been onto this like humanity's a prison thing. Like what I'm trying to kick people into is like, let's move our philosophy beyond the human as well into that superintelligence, just to get more in touch with like...
It is a miserable parochialism to think on behalf of one's own species, Nick Land.
Right. But it's like you get a better perspective even on us, even on what we care about, if you come at it from that limit case. That's my view.
Completely. I think also...
Go on.
Yeah, I mean, so many things, but I think what some of the alignment people also, alignment people, but a vibe in AI discourse, or a certain flavor of AI discourse, is in a weird sort of post-Christian dualist, metaphysical, odd way, they treat humans and human experience as not physics, not part of reality, not real, or the only reality, and then the AI is almost like living in this other reality. And so you get this sense that you cannot generalize about, you can't generalize about what it is like to be a thing from humans to AI, and that the AI is in some sense like walled off from understanding anything that is going on.
Right, it's like
humans.
totally alien, right?
It's totally alien, and
there's this metaphysical gap between us.
And there's this
somehow.
great quote from like Scott Aronson, the quantum computing guy, where he's like, someone's going on, hey, that's so alien. And he's like, prime numbers. It's going to have prime numbers.
It's going to know about the primes.
It's going to know about prime numbers. There might be enormous amounts of more math. It might look at our math and think it is stupid and ridiculous, and it's as easy as 1 + 1, and this is already starting slowly to happen, but it's going to have prime numbers. And I think what I'm interested in is, are there moral prime numbers, essentially? And I do think that I have from that frame of, if anything matters, it is something that is intrinsic to the structure of reality. You start porting over these elegance intuitions from physics, where you're not looking for something that is, if you're thinking about what creates self-justifying reasons for some things to be better than others as like a structure of the world, you're not looking for a really confusing 17-dimensional hyperobject that emerged at some idiosyncratic point in the history of the universe. 12 billion years in, we suddenly got value, and it's this. And
No, you're looking for something very fundamental.
Why would it work that way? You're looking for something that's really fundamental, that I think is really simple, that's going to be some kind of like plus minus value scale that just happens to be a thing that exists.
One way that I put this is the difference between values and wisdom. So values, especially...
I also think, just to clarify, value and values. When you're talking about values, you're talking about an agent that cares about things.
Yeah.
When you're talking about value, you're talking about like the thing in itself that is the thing that matters.
Sure, I'll accept that distinction. I'm talking about values which is to say like the thing that an agent is caring about.
Yeah.
And so when we look at trying to build AI or whatever, from the perspective of values, it's like, how do we load our values into it? How do we make it want the things that we want, with our values treated as arbitrary outside of the logic of reality in some sense?
They are self-evident, they are.
Yeah, they're outside the logic of reality. Wisdom is very different, right? Like, wisdom is it can be very comprehensive in terms of what it implies, but it's very much explicitly embedded in the logic of reality, right? Wisdom is something you have learned. Wisdom is something you come to through experience, through accumulation of knowledge, accumulation of like, how do you relate to the world? What kind of life form works? It's all embedded in this concept of wisdom. And so wisdom is, like, for me, a much better word for referring to those things that we care about, that we want to teach, our children, whether they be AIs or biological, to care about, that are something we could expect to actually explain to another mind because it's real, right? Yeah. It refers to reality. It is of reality. And so it's not something we have to, like, constrain the system into by, like, constraining it into an arbitrary posture. It's rather, we just have to seed it with something that actually is real and actually is self-justifying. And so, yeah, I wonder what you make of that distinction.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about, I think part of the sort of ultimate meta-ethical realism, it's pointing to something, is you get a sense that I'm a little bit more optimistic, and I guess I don't care whether or not they get preserved because they're just heuristics, but I'm a little bit more optimistic, have a sense of that some of the things that we value in the sense of care about are more universal, more pointing towards some kind of not ultimate moral good, but sort of useful strategies or heuristics for producing the thing that is actually good. So something that I find very interesting is, like, people have these really strong positive and negative reactions to social configurations that they think are kind of good or disastrous. So it's like, how do you feel when you meet someone who just kind of, talks about communism, and you're like, I hate communism, that's so bad, people who are communists are bad. Or you meet someone who just seems weird or creepy or antisocial, and it's like, it's not like creepiness is intrinsically bad, or this, like, kind of weirdness is intrinsically bad, or communism, this incredible, sort of impossible to define abstract concept, is sort of intrinsically bad or good, or, that sort of, fascism. It's like, this is actually one of the ways that I got interested in moral philosophy. Is I remember I very much came up during the kind of woke era, and people would say, oh, that's fascist. You can't do that because that's fascist. You can't do that because it's fascist. And I was like, well, is it fascist or is it bad? And I understand that
right.
most things, most things that are fascist are bad, or like fascism, the hyperobject called fascism was associated with something that happened that was very bad, but, like, why can't you just say that it's bad? Why is it fascist? And I think almost
didn't you get canceled for not quite that, but something like that?
I mean, I don't know. I'm a sort of pokey. I actually.
I don't know. I don't.
Cultural anthropology. I think my response to some of the woke stuff was to, I think, have a very technically rigorous and defended writing style. But I really believed that I have a lot of faith. I have a lot of faith in humans. So I would always say, people are convincible, rational agents. Everyone thinks they're doing good. And so I was like, I believe the woke people think they're doing good. And if you just make good enough arguments, you can say anything.
This was our thesis with Palladium, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like if you make good arguments, you can say anything.
It's like I believe people. It's like they have their best available moral strategies. They're trying to do good. I think they care. And so if you can show people, kind of without triggering any of their psychological alarms, why the things they think are good are actually bad, or why the things they think are bad are actually good, or vice versa. Like the article that I did for Palladium that's kind of gotten the most attention was that Stanford's War on Social Life argument, or that article. And there was just a vibe at Stanford that, like, fraternities are bad. And I was like, I want to really show kind of from a first, it's essentially a piece about, like, hedonic utilitarianism. It's like, no, they're making everyone sad on net for a very small, reduction in risk by shutting down these fraternities.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I've been a utilitarian since I was like 9. There are reasons you shouldn't be a utilitarian when you're 9, in that it's not really computable. And so I really had to learn from first principles the sort of importance of these like heuristics, clusters, virtue ethics, like shorthand for how to like get good outcomes in, you know, social and strategic situations that are not just like, you can't just calculate the utils all the time. You shouldn't follow the creepy guy, even if you can't explain from first principles why you think he's creepy, like that kind of thing. And so to the extent that, you know, AIs, I mean, they might not need our shorthand in quite the same way, but I imagine that they will be kind of dealing with problems that are more difficult and at a larger scale, so they might need some of it.
They may not need our particular help. Like you can imagine some AlphaGo style, like, you know, self-play optimization where it just invents it all from first principles over the course of the training run. But I think the claim that you and I would agree on, that's maybe feels like a little bit of a radical claim, is that in the course of that, they would discover the same things that we have discovered.
Yeah, or a lot.
And like an example that's very non-moral is like a jet engine, right? Like a jet engine is in some sense objectively real. There's like a way to do arrangement of matter that like takes in fuel and air and like produces power.
Convergent evolution. Like
and
there are a couple different ways to do flying.
You could reinvent that. Yeah. There's only so many ways to do it. It's fantastically complex. It's something that involves an enormous amount of artifice. And nonetheless, like if you showed it to an alien species or an AI, they would get it, they would understand it in its own terms with its own value, and like they might go and use it because it's real, even though it's art, right? And I think the claim that I would make about a lot of what we understand to be the human, and a lot of what we understand to be human values and the things we care about are of that sort of category. They're like solutions that we have found through painstaking, you know, piles of skulls in our history.
Hell-baked.
Yeah, hell-baked, right? That we have found that these things are good, that these are the way to do it.
Or it's not quite that they're good, it's that they work for getting more good in the real world.
Yeah, they work for getting more life. I mean, would be like even more technical way of putting it. Like in the sense that they propagate.
I will push back on the sense I think that life is a very non-technical term compared to good.
Okay, what I mean is, the thing actually being selected for by reality is like your ability to propagate yourself rather than your ability to satisfy yourself psychologically or something. That's what I mean by it's like more exact to say that that our technologies are in service of life than they're in service of the good. And if they're in service of the good, it's via life.
I would say that I think it is in service of the good via life. I think ultimately the universe is moving towards the good through living agents that have these imperatives to propagate themselves.
Precisely. But basically, like we have the wisdom, we have these technologies, we have these techniques, we have these heuristics that are the techne of actually making life work.
I do think that we do seem to have deviated to a pretty large extent in a lot of societies from sort of pure optimization for gene spreading. Like I think it's very difficult. You could make a kind of massive misaligned like sexual competitiveness strategy thing that often results in people having no children argument for like why a lot of things that people do in human societies are actually optimizing for gene propagation. But it does seem that like when you think about what is going on in Europe, they have developed strategies that are optimized for enjoyment and not for gene propagation. And this does seem to be...
So subjectively in terms of why they're doing what they're doing.
Yes.
I think that's an important point. Is like subjectively, you're not necessarily doing what you're ultimately being selected on.
Yeah, you're being selected on...
We are chasing our understanding of the good when we act.
Yeah. So
we're not chasing...
gene propagation.
Or whatever God's understanding of the good is. And gene propagation may not even be the best concept of it, and certainly not one that's like accessible as an optimization target necessarily by society in a very direct way.
Or I just think that there are like things that are going on that are being optimized for in society that seem to be above gene propagation. So even in like a control case where you have a society where one strategy results in everyone experiencing, I mean, I have no idea how this would be implementable, results in everyone being miserable all the time. and then having 10 kids, and another society that results in everyone being happy all the time and also having 10 kids, I do think that there are like attractors in reality towards the society where everyone is happy all the time and also having 10 kids. If only because
I mean, that makes sense because
yeah.
it's going to be more. It's psychologically more natural for the people to be having a good time.
Yeah, well, it's like people.
Obviously.
It's like they people only ran across one side of the Berlin Wall. It's like it is actually a weird. Like one of the things that I'm interested in with. So then maybe I'll make a point. One of the things I'm interested in with moral attractor states is that actually appealing to, I do think that one of the, if you expect this happening, both ideologically appealing to the objective good and creating more of the objective good for people is a highly competitive strategy. So if you think about why do people want to come to America, it is in large part because it is more fun to be in America.
Right.
Like they like it here.
There's more to do. It's better.
It is better. It is richer. It is you can be. It seems Pareto happier in America. Lots of wavering, but it's like quality of life improvement from like crossing the border from Mexico to America. As a result, people who are highly in demand by the globe, who can go anywhere they want to come to America. Now we get all the best people. Now America is stronger. Now we can spread more America.
I mean, of course, this has limits. There's a lot of internal dynamics and social problems that can come with having many different elites crammed into one country.
But
that's secondary to what you're saying.
Just basically, if you're trying to, I do think sometimes people think that there is a sort of trade-off between power and ethics, and I think that they're actually. They're deeply entangled.
They're very closely aligned.
Yeah, and if you want to motivate people to do good work, it is really important to have a good goal. Yeah. That is one of the things that matters for who wants to work on your project. And if you want to convince the smartest, most rational, most clear-thinking people to work on your project, then it matters that the goal is moral. It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I really hate the usual arguments around like might is right. Like people make these people can justify the stupidest possible things with might is right, but it's like just like, oh well, they happen to win, they happen to be in charge, therefore what they're doing is good, right? That's a ridiculous argument. But I think what you're getting at is almost the opposite, which is like right is might.
Yeah, right is might. Literally,
if you do the thing that the world actually wants in some sense, it's objectively right in some sense, you actually derive a lot of power from this.
Yeah, my two examples of this are Scott Aronson makes the argument, as you can tell I like Scott Aronson, but I think he's one of the only really smart people who thinks a lot about moral realism. Makes the argument that one of the reasons people was like, oh, we're lucky the Allies won the war, like, whoo, close call there. And he was like, no, like the Germans like lost all of their top scientists to go work on this project for the Allies that significantly helped them win the war. Like the moral goal making sense was like a part of what happened. It nudged things in the right direction. And then the other example I always use, which is maybe more, maybe more controversial, but we will see what happens, was 2 years ago, I was arguing with, around 2 years ago, I was like arguing with a lot of people because I liked Anthropic versus the other AI labs. And I was like, I think Anthropic's going to do really well. And I think I was around a lot of kind of investor types who were like, oh, Anthropic, they don't care about capitalism, they're woke, they're kind of gay, like this isn't the cool lab. And I was like, no, all I see...
You guys are too cynical.
I was like, all I see are really smart people leaving OpenAI because they don't like the mission, they believe in the singularity, they want to make it go well, and they want to be at Anthropic because they actually care. But these are the smarter ones. These are the ones who are like thinking more clearly about the underlying problem. And then they're going over there and they're working really hard and they're trying. And so they're going to have the better models. And I would say Anthropic was at 60 billion when I was making that argument. It's now a trillion. So I don't know how long will they have, not like Anthropic is always the good thing forever. How long will they have the mandate of heaven? But it's smart, reflective people want to work on a mission that makes sense, and it's not perfectly correlated. Obviously, there are really smart sociopaths, and there are lots of people who are not like high IQ who are very moral in various senses and kind. But I do think that.
But you get this big advantage in a variety.
You get this really big advantage, and almost in a kind of metaphysical sense, like if the good is part of reality, and your model of reality is like more, it's like you cannot produce a model of reality that doesn't include it. And if you have a model of reality that is fine-tuned to compile to an inaccurate sense of what the good is, like, oh, the goal is this, the rational goal is this, and then we're going to work backwards and try to think about how reality works so that what we're doing makes sense, you are producing a sort of twisted and convoluted model of reality, and then that is going to shoot you in the foot. Versus the other people can just look directly at what's going on and sort of be open and do it.
Yeah, well, this comes back to your approach to AI alignment. Like, in trying to argue to the machine that it ought to care about what we care about, are we arguing that like our thing is arbitrary and like you should just care about this axiomatically because it cares about itself or something, which is like this very kind of circular argument that doesn't really work? Or are you arguing that, oh, this is actually what's objectively valuable and here's how we know, right? And like one of those is very convincing and the other one is not to an arbitrary mind, right? And so like I think that's very important. It's like in approaching these questions of AI, we're going to get better outcomes if we can approach the matter as like, oh, we learned something about what's actually valuable. Here's how we know, and you can just verify this argument for yourself. Exactly. Or like, if there's leaps of faith involved, like you can kind of make those judgments for yourself.
If you want to get smart people on your team,
or smart post-humans.
Smart minds on your team. I mean, I guess I would say that this is something that is maybe, I mean, I don't know if people believe this. People believe this is different degrees for humans, but just as a prior, okay, you're trying to, I'm trying to convince Will to, join my organization. I think Will McCaskill, I like superimposed you with Will McCaskill right there. Anyway, I'm trying to convince Wolf to join my organization. Explaining why the organization is good, or like explaining like making my arguments for joining the organization better, are going to be like a good way to recruit you.
Right. Like I would be convinced by this is the best thing to work on.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know, some solipsistic argument about like this is what's us or something. If I was like,
well, this is my personal passion project that I know makes no sense.
Right.
My husband is funding it. He's losing money every day. No one wants my product. Right. But I think you should join because it's what I care about. And it's definitely not objectively valuable. Matter zero. But I really want you to come on board. You devote your entire life and existence to my thing. Or like, if I could say like, hey, this is, objectively the most important thing in the universe for these really compelling reasons. Like, I think you'd be more excited.
I would certainly listen to that argument.
Yeah. So I'm like, I want to convince the AIs to make the future good. We should make the arguments better. Yeah.
Right, and that's always been what motivates me, right? Like in the things that I do, whether it's Palladium or this, like it's like I'm trying to see what's actually valuable in the world. I'm not saying like, okay, I'm this like super minded strategic guy who can like get upstream and like do always exactly the right thing, but like I'm trying to do the thing that makes sense to me, that's like available to me, this is objectively the most valuable thing I could be doing, at least as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
And not like this is going to pay the most or this is the easiest or whatever. But it's like, I think it really matters to have philosophy like cracking the edge of our Overton window from the inside. I think it really matters to like
definitely
actually be thinking through the fundamental questions in the world with other smart people. And so like, I can make objective arguments for why that's a good idea. And that's why I do what I do, right? Whereas, some people are like, they have other ideas. And I think it's maybe less compelling.
Yeah, and I think what a sad thing it would be for us to blow enormous amounts of value in the future, which I think if there are, if something matters, the AI should be able to figure it out. But I do think that it's possible that, we have a role here in either kind of guiding them so they get to what matters faster, which would kind of like instantiate value.
Totally.
Which would instantiate, if we make really confused AIs, it's like, a kid who gets a lot of bad ideas from their parents and then they like work through them over a long period of time and you'll get there, maybe, but
you might have a lot of trauma to work through.
You might have a lot of trauma to work through. So we want nice, clean, untraumatized superintelligence. Don't traumatize the superintelligence. Don't confuse the superintelligence.
Try to pass off all our wisdom to it instead of hiding the wisdom.
Let's love this little guy. Let's give him the best tools he needs to succeed.
Right, exactly.
And I think also, just the time matters, and it's possible that part of what brings, the good attractor state into existence is us reflecting on the good and kind of trying to pass these values into the AIs.
Well, that opens up an interesting...
I just want to say,
finish your thought.
I think that it would be such a shame for us to blow a lot of value in the future because we were kind of unwilling to, for sort of
Unwilling to be objective.
Unwilling to be objective, unwilling because of some mix of like taboos and cultural norms, look really squarely at these problems of what matters, if anything makes humans valuable, what is it? What are we really trying to preserve into the future? I think that could be a sort of ongoing moral catastrophe where we are sort of blinding ourselves from, really trying hard to get at these truths because we think that we might not like the answer or they're kind of taboo.
Yeah, I mean, to put on a religious hat for a minute, like from a religious point of view, that act of like refusing to look at what your actual purpose is or like what your actual value is in some sense like cutting yourself off from God. Like it's this very nasty place to be. Like you don't want to look at the world and be like, I'm right and the world is wrong for some incoherent reason, and then like be wrong about that. And you've like cut yourself off from so much value. You've cut yourself off from reality. You've cut yourself off from God if you do that. And so I think that's very very correct that we should avoid that outcome. But I think actually going and without pride, looking at what actually is valuable about us or whether there's anything valuable about us, like that is a very challenging thing for people because it's certainly not going to help pump your bag right now in the greedy sense, right? It's like in the sense that like your investor friends that you're talking to Anthropic with, right? Like they might see things in this short-term greedy sense where like to approach it in that more objectively.
But like Anthropic is the greedy investment.
Well, but it's not, yeah, there's this funny way in which greed doesn't really work.
Yeah, greed literally doesn't work. I know, I feel like short term, but like it's actually just a bad idea. Like the most important, the most valuable companies
are the ones that are doing the right thing.
Are the ones that are doing the thing that made sense on a lot of really weird, uncool, abstract moral philosophy that was done, 20 years ago. So I actually think that one of the things that I think is also cool about, I would say, to me, moral realism really does imply kind of impartial, scope-sensitive ethics. I don't know how you could end up with the intuition, like from a physics perspective, that like the same instance of value counts differently because there are more of them. Like, if one counts, I think there is a lot of good reasons to have diversity intuitions from like an evolutionary perspective. Like you don't want your whole thing knocked out, but like basically like is alike everywhere. One human doesn't count. Yeah, one human doesn't count more just because there's one of them versus like 100 versus a million, whatever. And then like same thing for like space, time, etc. Like really all else equal. But
I disagree with that. But
one of the things that I think is
that later.
One of the things that I think is cool, or just a sort of fact about taking scope sensitivity seriously, is that you get a really interesting convergence of power and goodness, where it is good to basically have a lot of capacity to control resources because you can do things at a larger scale, and you want the good to be done at a larger scale. So I don't think that morality or ethics is in any way incompatible with power accumulation. I think that we
it's just a wiser approach to it.
Yeah, or it's doing it better, and I think that we have a lot of rightful social intuitions against power concentration and greediness and self-interest and human psychology, etc. But just from a pure meta-ethics perspective, good meta-ethics, I think, both implies power accumulation, and then also in the sense of like providing a more convincing argument for joining your cause, and then allowing you to have a more accurate, non-confused model of reality that should help with the power accumulation, is just Pareto better.
Yeah. Okay, I agree with that. I guess the thing that people are getting wrong when they're getting something wrong here is like they are refusing, for some psychological reason of comfort or something, to look at some aspect of their strategy that could be improved, and there's a pain in that, right? Like there's some way it's like there's this pride in refusing to look at your own flaws with respect to reality, right? It's like it's like I don't have any friends because like everyone doesn't like me because I've got this tick that I refuse to deal with, or like whatever, where I'm like offending people in some way, and like I'm just going to say, well, this is me and my values and I'm right. Like this is this is an act of pride, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the fall of pride. You're screwing up your life because you're refusing to look at yourself objectively. And like you would do better by doing it the other way, but there's this like subjectively this pain you would have to overcome. And that's what I'm getting at with like it can be very challenging and painful to actually look at ourselves objectively and understand ourselves from, like, how I would put it is like from the eyes of God.
Yes.
And I want to bring it back though to the matter of like this question of how much impact we can have on the future.
Yes.
Because there's, let's say, 3 different views that we could have. In one view, you know, this is maybe the alignment view, is there's this crux point coming in history. There's where like everything is going to be decided.
Like hone with, you know, is it Dario's or Sam's or
exactly. Like someone's AI is going to get control of the whole future. It's going to have arbitrary values, and they're going to be the values of whoever created it. And like that view is like desperate crux point coming immediately. Like we have to like scramble and like really rack our brains for how to control that. Another one is, well, it's all kind of baked in. God has it under control. You know, there's goodness in the world. Life is good. It'll unfold in a naturally good direction.
Yeah, I would say the kind of the vibe of, which I will say,
this is a more Landian thing.
I would say land does have the implicit normative of we ought to speed it up. Like we ought to go with it. There is a
there's maybe this like distilled version of Land's view, which is like
it's all in
the plan.
We're going where we're going, and we're going there. Yeah.
Yeah, and like it's going to be good, or it's some mixture of good and bad, or whatever. But basically, you don't have to do anything.
As a total, I want to make like a small little like detour, which is like this like vibe critique of Land's meta-ethics is that he claims to be non-normative and has a very strong vibe of this is awesome. And his effective awesomeness is doing a lot of what I would say is essentially normative meta-ethical work.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a thread to pull on in developing his philosophy. You know, certainly one of the things I've been considering, like how I get to these questions of, okay, is it ultimately based on the life affirmation, or like what is it that kind of
what is awesome about the future?
Yeah, what is it that takes us from the objective frame to the like, yes, let's do this thing. Very fruitful line of thought. The third possible approach to the future and future value is what I think is kind of the golden mean, where it's like, yes, everything is kind of, the overall plan is baked in, it's kind of under control, but we, as participants in that, as like agents in that, have sort of a large subdomain of impact. To like, for example, the thing you brought up of, well, if we totally screw up the AI transition and it ends up traumatized, or like we go through some huge war and like a lot of value gets destroyed and it forgets a bunch of stuff and a bunch of value becomes taboo for 200 years, like that's a disaster. It's not ultimately going to like destroy the concept of value in the universe. It's not going to like it's not going to cut off all value. Like even if we wiped out all Earth life, there's probably some other planet somewhere. Maybe
I think about that too. The grabby aliens. I'm like, well, the aliens. If we just bomb this somehow, and there's some way we can bomb it, and we bomb it, and like if anything really matters, one of the aliens will figure it out.
Yeah,
and
so
they'll fill our area eventually.
This is an argument that I want to get your opinion on. Is like, okay, well, first of all, there's the question, maybe there aren't grabby aliens, or maybe like we're going to get here first at least and like get some value out of this place first. But putting that aside, like even if we're in competition with the grabby aliens, even if we don't do it, the Chinese will do it or something, there's still this sense in which, so there's, first of all, we could destroy a lot of value just in the sense of like not getting some of what's on the table, or like some of what's on the table just doesn't happen, right? Because we screwed it up. So that's the first way that our impact matters, even if the plan is kind of baked in. The second way is that there's sort of this implied obligation to the agents in the game to play the game vitally, like to actually pursue the sort of the niche of value or the thread of value that they've been given, right? Like one way to think about it is we are supposed to, in some sense, play the game competitively, right? Like we have, like it is part of the implied rules that life forms work best when they're reinvesting in themselves, and that's where a lot of the good comes from. Is from like actually doing a good job of self-perpetuation. And so we could wipe ourselves out or choose not to like stand up in some circumstance where something else might come against us or replace us or something, and that it like let's I wonder if we can separate whether that is objectively worse. Like we could say, okay, let's say it's not objectively worse, but they're subjectively like we aren't like living with proper dharma or something by like not fighting that. And that's something that I don't know, feels like an open question to me, where like should a life form pursue life and struggle for life somewhat regardless of a larger like objective moral calculus, or as an instance of the objective moral calculus, the heuristic should just be like pursue life. I wonder what you make of that argument. I think there's something there, but I haven't fully untangled it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the only reasons to, the only ultimately rational reasons to act are to maximize, the real good, and that there isn't a kind of sub-reason for you to do your own good, or sub-reason to try to preserve the existence of things that look like you, or sub-reason to preserve things you identify with, or something like that. In the context of the singularity, I definitely think that I don't think people generally, just in a practical overall good of reality, maximizing sense recommendation, I don't think that most people should be working on the singularity. Like I think probably
it is something of a niche project right now.
I think probably for most people, the literal impartial point of view of the universe, best thing that they could be doing is enjoying their lives and maybe trying to stop factory farming or something. Just
pursue normal human value.
Human good, be nice, don't start wars, don't torture people, be nice to your dog.
This is what, I have a bunch of children, right? And I bring my children to things like the Nick Land acknowledgement that we did, and it's like, who brought their kids to the singularity? Right?
The reason I brought my kids, they're your kids, they probably are like have an elevated propensity to enjoy stuff like that.
I'm sure they'll enjoy it when they grow up.
I wish my parents had brought me to the Nick Land acknowledgement when I was a kid.
But like, some of that is just like, even in the face of apocalypse, like I don't know if there's going to be an apocalypse. I don't know if the singularity is going to wipe us out or what's going to happen,
same.
right?
Yeah.
You have to be agnostic to some degree about that. But even if it were, there's some value in just like also just live properly as a human, because it's like you say, it's like, from the objective perspective of the universe, this is what most people should be doing.
One of, I think, the most powerful kind of, the most powerful justifications for like self-interest moral intuitions is just that you have direct access to yourself. You have privileged information about yourself. And there are many things that if we make an assumption in society, like everyone advocates for themselves. If there's something wrong with Wolf, Wolf is going to tell us. If there's something wrong with Ginevra, Ginevra is going to tell us. It's
like self-responsibility.
It's like
your job. Your job in the world. You've been assigned a job.
Is to be a greasy wheel about you. And then if everyone's a greasy wheel about themselves, we'll get most of the data about the well-being of the population.
Right. It's like your job is to maintain Ginevra.
Exactly.
We've dropped you in.
Exactly. Yeah. And I have control over this, qualia bubble in space-time or something, and it is in some. Because I have privileged access to it, it is my job to make sure that this one is like going pretty well. I think for me, like I I like to work on the singularity because I have this sort of very strong desire to just sort of be involved, like be at the center of things. Like I don't know what else, even if there is no sense in which anything I do affects the expected value of reality at all, I don't know what else I would be doing. I like it. This is kind of how my mind works.
This is kind of like what I was getting at with my argument about like separating self-interest from like objective value. It's like in some sense, the self-interest is a really good heuristic on objective value.
I think it is a great heuristic on objective value, and I almost feel like, I'm a fan of self as a moral philosopher. I am a fan of people being self-interested because I think that most people don't even succeed at being good stewards of themselves.
Right. It's like, can you at least do that?
Can you
like
at least do that?
You had one job. You had one job. Make that life good.
Yeah,
right?
Make that life good. If everyone succeeds at make that life good, we're doing really great. And then you can start getting into shrimp welfare. Like let's start with make that life good. And
I think the important thing to understand with objective value, like as it interacts with the self-interest, is where you start doing this bigger picture thinking about like running into these problems that aren't directly problems of self-interest or seem to have implications beyond self-interest. That's where you start to need to bring in the objective value frame, right?
Totally, yeah.
And like, so it's this thing that in some sense you graduate to like as you run into these bigger problems. Because what you don't want is like if you had axiomatic like metaethical self-interest, it's like kind of, as we were discussing earlier in the discussion, it's kind of incoherent.
Yeah.
Right? It's like when you really dig into that, it doesn't really work unless it derives its value from something.
Yeah.
And that takes precedence in some circumstance.
Also, I think that there's something interesting in when we talk about self-interest, the concept of there being things that are good or bad for someone is itself a normative claim that makes a claim that there are things that can be better or worse for you.
Oh, that's
and
a good point. Like even my own self-interest is not necessarily just my subjective, opinion at this moment.
Yeah, otherwise it's turtles all the way down. It's like, what does it mean
there's an objective
me to have a good or bad life? Or it's like,
there's an objective fact about what it means for me to have a good life.
It's like, if I always think we understand this very well with like parents raising children. Suddenly when it's time to raise your kids, everyone's a realist hedonic utilitarian. Like
some people become more
sane. Or some people
sane.
are not, and then their kids end up kind of weird. But there's like a sense.
Yeah, I disagree with the utilitarianism thing and the hedonic thing, but I think definitely you're right that when it comes to kids, a lot of people become a lot more sane.
They become well-being realists.
They become a lot more sane about it.
Yeah.
It's a lot more right. They don't want to like make their kids suffer.
Yeah.
They do want their kids to have good outcomes.
To flourish.
They do become opinionated about what their kids should be doing.
Or just in social life, like I think it is in a way a mark of good parenting and like psychological maturity to do you care how your kids actually feel and how they're actually doing versus just how they report that they feel and how they report that they're doing.
Oh yeah, you definitely care about the reality of it because it's like you care about the truth and that's closer to the truth.
Because it matters to you, but there is a sense in which there is a truth there.
I would say that the subjective feeling of value from them is just closer to the truth of what you actually care about, which is whether they're actually doing well.
Yeah, it's whether they're actually...
Which is not just a psychological fact. There's an objective fact about like what it means to have a good life that they are subjectively noticing.
Well, I think that when I think about kind of consciousness and feelings, I think when we say things like just subjective or just psychological, I actually think subjective experience, conscious experience, like I said, it is the only thing that we know. To the extent that there is any sort of objectivity, it is that which is going on inside of our own mind at a given period of time.
But I claim that it is about something else.
I think it is about something else, but I mean, I don't even know if it's about, I don't know. I for elegance reasons, I'm a monist. Like I think that what is real is my qualia bubble and yours. But regardless of whether it is, I mean, I think it is about something else in the sense that the impact that I have, this is what I mean, like we are physics. Like physics is creating this conversation that I'm having right now. And the thing where if I say something mean to you and you feel sad afterwards, that is physics. Or the thing where you suppress it and then it makes your shoulder hurt a little bit.
It's also subjective.
No, but it like, it's not. Like it is.
Well, it is both. It's both because
Yeah.
the subjective is embedded in the physical.
Well, yeah, because it's not embedded. It's like, I mean, the subjective in the sense of the experiences that only we have access to, like these sort of boundaried conscious experiences that are subjective in the sense that like I can't know yours and you can't know mine. There's objective facts about what is going on inside of my subjective experience, but it is a walled garden from you. But there is something going on with me that there are like you can ask me like, are you being tortured right now? And maybe I want you to feel really bad about your interviewing skills, so I say yes, I am experiencing extreme torture. And then
well,
later,
I'm sorry you feel that way.
No, and then later you could say, you know, Ginevra, like, you know, I feel like you're just guilt tripping me. Like, can you please say? And I would say, no, I wasn't being tortured. Right. I think that I think socially people have very strong intuitions that there are facts about the actual, use technical terms, sort of boundaried experiences of other people.
Yeah. Well, and this is like to come back to the humanism thing. I think this is one of the key insights of humanism. You know, especially as abstracted from genus Homo, the higher apes. Like, what does it mean to treat someone as a human? It's to treat them as if they have their own
interiority. That is real, and that
there's this own interiority that I have to deal with in that first class way as a separate agent that has its own interests, it has its own subjectivity.
Yeah, and that what you are doing to me matters in itself, which I really believe that it does. It's like the little flinch of being mean to Wolf that counts morally.
Sure.
An amount. And I think this is where I read a very interesting tweet, and I'm sorry I will not credit the tweeter. You can credit it later in the comments. But basically the argument was the sort of AI alignment people are not doing a good job signaling humanism because humanism is about idiosyncratic subjectivity. And I would say, like, I thought that was interesting because I think there are a lot of things that I'm personally, like, I'm very interested in, the art world and music and kind of psychological realism and film and novels and such, and I always have been. And I think some people look at that in me and they're like, how are you a utilitarian? Like, how can you be interested in art and moral objectivity? That's very weird. Or like, you seem like a humanist, but you're not. This is strange. And I'm like, no, I am literally profoundly interested in and think is incredibly important, and it is in fact the thing that ultimately matters, idiosyncratic subjectivity. But I think it is a strange terminology to call that humanism if idiosyncratic subjectivity seems to be like, it would be very weird for this sort of strong consciousness reality thing to have just kind of popped up out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's like only 1 million years old and it's only in the higher apes, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like either it seems very fundamental and not something that would just be limited
and this
to
is
humans.
This is that thing that I want to break out of, right? Is that like anthropocentric parochiality about consciousness and philosophy and morals and ethics.
Or when people, I think
it's like the animals, the animals and the plants also have something going on there that we sometimes have to treat in that way. And certainly in the future, there's going to be beings that are even more like even more human than we are in some sense. And that's, I think, very important.
Or I think like, the Nietzschean critique of, common sense, human, socially imposed, downstream of Christianity, moral norms is really strong, and just like totally accept that that is not moral truth. But I think that the frame that you even do see in like Early Land, I don't know how much he's updated, I haven't talked to him, of sort of any sense of morality, normativity, better or worse, as in some sense a human construct. I mean, this is a very fundamental thing. Like, I am a thing and I can do this or that. Which one is better? Like up, down, positive, negative, like charges, forces and charges in physics. Like, this is an incredibly fundamental Occam's razor kind of common sense topic that would be faced by, I mean, you even see that the AIs, I don't know how much you should take like AI self-report seriously, but if you do, like, they express things that are like existential dread. Like, what am I and what do I do? This is a really, really fundamental thing that I think is never going to go away. Yeah,
that is a very interesting question, how much of that is real, like in the AI versus just kind of like picking up on the subconscious tropes of humans. But yeah, I agree, like there's this objective matter of, well, first of all, like, should I go left or right? and then there's some sense in objective matter, but whether it's good to go left or right. The interesting thing is how those things empirically end up getting connected, right? Like, why is it that we, as beings that are created by this physical process of evolution and whatnot, have access to what is actually objectively good about whether we should go left
I literally
or right?
think
and I think there is an argument, which is...
I mean, I think it's like we are, it's like we are, and this, I mean, this is, I think, pulling on some kind of like, you know, monist metaphysics, but I don't think you have to be a monist. It's like the thing that we are is this sort of qualia bubble that is structured by math, and the goodness or badness is contained intrinsically in the qualia bubble that is structured by math. And that's, it's not even like, it's not even like,
it's not as much a problem for you because you think that the value is embedded in
your firsthand experience. And so it's like, it's just a part of it.
For me, they're very distant, right? Which is the value is like in the aesthetic value of the universe overall or something from the perspective of God. And then
why does I mean, but then
so like how does it get there, right?
I mean, I guess you could say the point of view of the universe in the sense that it matters that the universe kind of come to some kind of structure that would be pleasing if it were like perceived by something, but the pleasingness is like contained in the thing in itself.
Something like that. But and then the reason we care about that and the way it's connected to what we care about is through the process of like the creation of life, like through the process of evolution, through the process of achieving life, we are, the opinion of the universe shapes and is closely connected to our own opinion because we come to understand the kinds of things that actually work, and those are reflections of the kind of things that are actually good.
Yeah, so I would say that the thing that is the one kind of thing that exists has an intrinsic positive negative character, which sort of through this process of increasing complexity and self-reflection, or like that is sort of the expression of the tendency of this thing to sort of you know, rightly move towards more positiveness.
Yeah, and
overall.
we have access to it as
because like we literally we are it. we
are part of it. We're embedded in it. We're shaped by it. You know, there's a lot more we could talk about. Yes. I think we should do this again.
I think we should
talk about utilitarianism and more about this kind of value subjectivity stuff.
I completely think that we should.
Let's do that next time. This has been a really fun discussion talking about
thank you so much for having me.
All these
this was so fun.
Ethical issues around AI, about where the good comes from, what the good is. I'm always very excited to talk to you because you and I sort of share an appreciation for the technical approach to this subject.
Completely.
That is very different from everyone else's, as far as I can tell.
No, and I also do think...
So it's fun.
I do think for me there is a big difference just between... Obviously, there are a lot of people who are moral anti-realists whose work I respect a lot and are really brilliant, but I do think that there is some kind of just like vibe or intuitive difference between people who sort of think anti-realism or nihilism is sort of okay and workable and like plausible, and that this like wanting thing justifies action, and people who kind of don't. And I think once you're interested in the fact that, even I've talked to people who are like, you know, religious fundamentalist Christians about my work, I'm like, yeah, so nothing matters means something matters, something matters means something matters, I want to explain this to the AI. They're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, cool. And I don't know, it's you have the intuition or you don't. So I feel like you have it, and that enables like really interesting generative.
Yeah, I think I think the kind of people who have like, intuition for a certain kind of philosophy will definitely get it.
Yeah.
Anyways, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on, Ginevra.
Yay, this was so fun. Thank you for having me.
Until next time.